Hello. Welcome to episode 45 of Uncanny Oddities. Yeah, I figured I'm not the intern anymore, so I'm going to start calling it Uncanny Oddities. So, how is everyone tonight? Thank you for coming to hang out with me on this late night live stream here. I decided to do it the last minute. So I'm going to be honest with you all. I have been very busy lately, and I just got a little bit distracted and a little too busy, and I didn't have time to record my episode for earlier today. Hi, James. Good to see you. I'm actually live this time. And anyways, excuses aside, I'm here now, and we're going to talk about Holy Mountains, Batman. Yes, it happens. Thank you for understanding, James. So tonight, well, first off, the other day when we were talking about holy places, I kept thinking about all these mountains, and I was like, oh, I want to talk about this mountain. I want to talk about that mountain. And I kept getting so excited. So I figured, you know what? I'm going to talk about holy mountains, specifically mountains that are holy for my sideshow this week. So I'm going to start with one of my favorites, of course, is Mount Sinai in Egypt. Sinai, not really sure how to pronounce that. The religious significance is it is sacred in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In the Torah and Old Testament, Moses receives the Ten Commandments there. That's one of my favorite parts. That's where I know it from the most. When they bring the Ark of the Covenant down, and well, they don't bring it down, but he gives him the Ten Commandments, and then he tells him how to build the Ark of the Covenant. I think that's how it actually goes. I'm still very new to religion lore, but I'm still trying to learn. Uh, Physical traits. It was a rugged peak in the Sinai Peninsula, about 2,285 meters, or 7,497 feet. Mystical interpretations include that in Kabbalistic tradition, it's not just a location, but it's a moment in time when divine law descended into material reality. Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. Definitely. Now, there are some alternative theories as well. Some French researchers suggest the real Mount Sinai may be in Saudi Arabia, citing archaeological anomalies. So that one's pretty interesting. But if you want more information on that, one of my favorite sources, not to name drop other sources, so I'm not gonna do that right now. We're trying not to. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm rambling, but there's some good sources for that on YouTube. I'll just say that. Uh, but if you do want some more sources, reach out to me personally. I'm just not sure how I feel about cross promoting other shows while we're actively doing our show. That's all. Not that I don't love the other show, not that I'm trying to be rude. I'm still kind of new to the whole promoting thing, and it makes me feel very awkward to promote stuff, so I try not to do it. Okay, honestly, that's what it is. I feel very awkward when I try to promote things. But anyways, moving on. The next one I wanted to talk about is absolutely my favorite by far. And this one is Mount Shasta. It is in California, USA, and it is considered holy by multiple groups, including Native American tribes, New Age seekers, and mystics. Local legends say there is a Lemurian mythos about this mountain, said to house an underground city called Talos, inhabited by the survivors of the lost continent Lemuria, which is, if you didn't know, Lemuria are the ones who were fighting against Atlantis when all that went down. And my understanding, if I remember right, my understanding was that Atlantis were the aggressors. No, no, no. I said that backwards. I'm sorry. Atlantis were the defenders, and Lemuria were the aggressors. I think that's how I did. I got to look this up now. I'm so sorry. I want to make sure I get this right. So let me look this up real quick. I apologize. Okay. So here we go. So the theory is blah blah blah. Where is the war? Their society was deeply connected, spiritual laws. Uh, let's see. Okay. Some accounts claim Atlantis launched a campaign against Lemuria around 25,000 years ago, ultimately leading to the destruction of both civilizations. Okay, so confirmation, since I got a little bit confused, I did want to look it up. And confirmation, Atlantis were the aggressors, supposedly, if you believe in that. Atlantis were supposedly the aggressors. But Lemurian mythos is said to house an underground city called Talos, inhabited by the survivors of the lost continent Lemuria, which was supposedly wiped out by nuclear war. And I think that's a very big warning about some stuff going on, but not going to get too much into that. Spiritual energy vortex. Some believed that Mount Shasta was a power spot where energy lines or ley lines converge. It is also a UFO hotspot with frequent reports of glowing orbs and strange craft. And if you go there in Grand Theft Auto 5, you can actually go to Mount Shasta. I think that's where it is. I think that's the one in Grand Theft Auto 5. And you can actually go there. Yeah, because it's in California. Anyways. And you can actually see a UFO hovering above the mountain if you go there at the right time of day in the game. And you can also see a ghost if you go there at, I think it's 3 a.m. in the game. Like, there's all sorts of Easter eggs at that, mountain in the game that relate to this stuff. Now, the Native Americans also had some lore about this. Wintu, Shasta, and Modoc tribes see it as the birthplace of the world and home to creator spirits. Now, I actually wrote a short little story about Mount Shasta that I'm going to share here in a minute. But first, let's go ahead and, get through a few other mountains first, okay? So the other day, we did go over Mount Kailash and Mount Fuji. So I'm not going to bother going over those. We went over those on the main show the other day. Now, briefly, Mount Olympus is, let's call it an honorable mention. It is the home of the ancient Greek gods and mythology, where Zeus would rain down his lightning bolts on unsuspecting men so he could sleep with their wives. Oh, no. Oh, I apologize. I know this is supposed to be mostly family friendly, but I mean, come on. They showed that in G-rated movies. I remember seeing some stuff with Zeus and the Hercules movies. Come on now. But anyways, let's continue. That's all I wanted to say about that. I just wanted to, make that little joke. So, next up, we're going to get into my little story now. So, let's get down here. All right. So I've got it pulled up in my notes right here. All right. Crack my knuckles. All right. You know what? I'm going to go full funny voice for this story that I wrote. All right. Let's get to it. All right. So, way up in Northern California, just before you hit the Oregon border, there's this massive snow-capped mountain called Mount Shasta. All right. Now, from a distance, it looks peaceful, right? Postcard perfect. But the closer you get, the weirder the stories get. And I mean weird. Some people say it's the birthplace of the world. Some swear there's an ancient city under it. And others, they think it's a UFO hotspot. Tonight, we're going to talk about all of it. And I'll warn you now, once you hear some of these stories, you might not look at the mountains the same way ever again. Ooh, King David and Bathsheba. Ooh, is that in the Bible? I do need to read that. I have been mentioning that I've been wanting to read that. Now, the first stories. Long before the roads, the tourists, the ski lodges, Native American tribes were already treating Shasta as sacred. Wintu, Modoc, Shasta, Karuk, Achimami, they all have their own legends, all right? The Wintu say the Great Spirit came down from the sky and made his home right here in Mount Shasta. From Shasta, he created the rivers, the forests, and the first people. The Modoc tell of Scale, a spirit of goodness who fought against Lao, a spirit from Mount Mazama. That's Crater Lake today. Their battles were so fierce, they hurled fire and lava at each other until Liao was destroyed and his mountain collapsed into that huge lake. You hear these stories and you start to get why people see mountains as more than just rock. They're these massive, movable things that reach up into the sky, out of character. Like we mentioned the other day on, on our other podcast on the main show. We were talking about how they're, so big, they like reach up into the sky. And, anyone seeing something that huge would definitely think, oh, wow, that's got to be holy. I mean, going up into the clouds like that must be where the gods live. It's easy to see why people would associate mountains with holy sites. Of course, they'd feel a bridge between them worlds. Now about the Lemurians. So now we're going to go ahead and skip ahead to the late 1800s. All right? You with me so far? All right. A guy named Frederick Oliver writes a book called A Dweller on Two Planets. All right? Says he got the whole thing dictated to him by someone from an underground city. And where is this underground city located? That's right. It was right beneath Shasta. He calls it Talos, says it's home to the survivors of Lemuria, an ancient continent that sank into the Pacific. And these Lemurians, they're tall, they're pale, they wear flowing robes. Some people say these robes are even covered in sigils or glyphs. And they've got technology we can't even dream of. Crystal-powered cities, healing machines, gateways to other realms. I am not aware of the Devil's Tower tree stump theory. I will have to look into that. That does sound pretty interesting. Apparently, they don't come out much, all right? But when they do, they're here to guide people or trade. Because, see, they live in a trade bartering-based economy. They don't believe in the power of money. They think money holds power over people. So they don't do that. They prefer to have a trade-based economy based on bartering. And oftentimes, many times, they will even trade knowledge for products. They will use knowledge as a currency. And it's like, if you don't know something, someone else can teach it to you, and you'll give them part of your skill. Like, say, for example, if you know how to make pots or pottery or jars or whatever, and they don't know how to make that, but they do know how to cook really well, maybe they'll cook you some food and you give them a jar or a pot, that kind of stuff. I think it's a wonderful idea. Me, myself, and I. Now, if you believe the rumors, you just might spot one walking through the forest at night with a glowing staff. And in the idea of ley lines, those invisible rivers of Earth's energy, and Shasta starts sounding like the perfect spot for something ancient and powerful to hide, don't you think? How are you liking my voice? I'm having fun with the voice. A little hard on my throat, but I'm having fun with it. Now, as for the Ascended Masters, fast forward to the 1930s. All right, you with me so far? A guy named Ballard is hiking Shasta. Claims he meets a man named Saint Germain. Oh yeah, you knew I'd get back to it eventually. You knew I'd get back to him eventually. Reintroduce Count Saint Germain, the homie. We love Count Saint Germain. And if you've read up on mysticism, you know Saint Germain is kind of a big deal. An ascended master, the immortal teacher figure, The meeting kicks off the whole I am activity, a spiritual movement that pulls people all over the country straight to Shasta. Ever since, Seekers have been coming here hoping for their own mountaintop encounter, just hoping that one day, if they're lucky, they just might get to meet the great and wondrous Count Saint Germain, and he might impart upon them some of his knowledge. Now, a brief aside, since we're speaking of an ancient alchemist, I would like to do a tangent really quickly. And, ooh, that is a good quote. Eat of the fruit of the tree of knowing good and evil, and ye shall be as gods. Satan. I like that quote, James. That's a good one. Thank you. Now, for my little tangent here, I wanted to stop my story real quick, and because I'm actually very proud of myself. And I've been thinking about it, and I've been, really studying alchemy and doing a lot of research on ancient alchemists and stuff like that lately. And I did another session in my language encoding classes recently. Well, not classes, just, some practice I've been doing. And I feel like I've gotten pretty good at it now. So I can translate normal sentences into cryptic language that sounds like ancient alchemy. For example, what I came up with the other day that I really enjoyed was, instead of saying, for example, instead of saying, I'm tired, one might say, the shape of the hourglass of the Sandman's dreamscape seeks to consume my entire mind. That's a much more fun way of saying that you're tired. I mean, it's much more fun. But that's enough for the aside. That was fun. That was enough of that, though. All right. So back to our story. Now we're moving on to the lights. Yeah, people say that they see lights at Mount Shasta, so let's get into this part of it. Now, not everyone comes for the spiritual side. Some come for the lights. Shasta's been a UFO hotspot for decades. People see glowing spheres moving across the sky, and more than a few have claimed those lights dive straight into the side of the mountain, like it's not solid at all. Others talk about metallic craft just hovering there in total silence before just vanishing. One of the weirdest stories: in 2011, a boy goes missing in the Shasta wilderness. They find him, and he tells his parents he was taken underground by a woman who looked exactly like his grandma, except it wasn't her. She wanted to test him, and that's all he'd say. Because if you want to go a little deeper into this with the boy and his grandmother, let's call her Granny Cookie. That's a good name. Let's call her Granny Cookie. So they're out camping in the forest one night, right? And all of a sudden, late one night, the boy, he's over in the woods, and his family's over here, he's over there. He's looking around, exploring the trees, and all of a sudden he sees Granny Cookie off in the distance. And he's like, Granny, what are you doing here? I thought you were back at home. Granny Cookie, she's all like, come here, buddy. I wanna ask you a few questions. And so next thing they know, little Billy over here, he's gone missing. Ain't nobody know where he is. And when he finally gets back home, they're like, so where have you been? Who took you? And he tells them, Granny Cookie. But it wasn't Granny Cookie. It was like Granny Cookie, but not Granny Cookie, you know? And that dude, he was weird, Like there was something wrong. But so that was a fun story. And as for the geology, even without the legends, Shasta's interesting. All right? It's a stratovolcano, part of the Cascade Range. It's got lava tubes and caves going deep underground. And honestly, if you've ever been in one, you can see how people imagine secret cities down there. Those caves are huge. Some climbers have had their compasses spin in certain spots. Others have seen weird snow patterns, sharp geometric shapes that look just not natural. Now these days, Shasta draws all kinds. Hikers, UFO hunters, spiritual seekers. The town at the base has crystal shops, metaphysical bookstores, and more than a few folks who will tell you their own strange encounter stories. Every summer, there are retreats, vision quests, and little unofficial gatherings where people share their experiences. And the thing is, they're still happening. The sightings, the strange meetings, the feeling that something's just off up there. Now, Mount Shasta is one of those places where myth, mystery, and reality all overlap. For some, it's the face of God. For others, it's proof of a lost civilization. And for a few, it's a doorway to something that doesn't belong in our world at all. Whatever it is, Shasta keeps the secrets. And maybe that's the point. Would you camp there overnight? Ta-da! That's the end of my story. James, you think it might be spirits? I have heard stories about that. I've done a bit of deep research on Mount Shasta. That's why I wanted to go into this one because it's one of my favorites. So yeah, I have heard not necessarily any specific stories, but I have heard that spirits in general reside on that mountain. And I don't remember if I mentioned it earlier or not, but there is an Easter egg in GTA 5 where you can find a spirit on that mountain if you go to a certain area of the mountain at I think it's 3 in the morning in the game. Thank you for coming to hang out with me, James. Thank you everyone else who was out there and, in this uncanny land. Sorry it was a bit later tonight. I goofed. I done goofed. I admit it. I own up to it. And I will do better next week. So James says I need to find out about gods of the nations, powers, and principalities, as well as do some research on John D. Alchemist. So I will look into that. Thank you for the tips, and I will see everyone next time. Thank you, and I bid you adieu. Oh, yeah, also, why be boring when you can be uncanny? Obviously.